So in this video, I'm going to show you some cool JavaScript tricks and techniques while having fun. So let me walk you through what we will be seeing. So there is this programmer called Dave Gray who teaches code online, and he has some great material online. So I highly recommend that you search for Dave Gray and watch his YouTube videos and tutorials. So I landed upon this page. This page is called Buy Me a Coffee, and it's a page through which you can buy a coffee and spend either $5, $15, or $25 and contribute to the work that someone has put online for creating, for example, educational material. And I was really curious about how much money can someone make through Buy Me a Coffee. So I landed upon this page, and I scrolled down. I saw a few messages where people were posting like the how many coffees they were actually paying for Dave, and you could scroll down. As you can see, you can load more and see a full list of the people that have bought a coffee for Dave. Of course, we have to click the button See More and scroll down until we get to the end of the list, and then we have to find a way to count all these coffees together and find the exact total amount. So that's my journey. Like, this is what I wanted to find out. So this is going to be like a fun project, and we're going to use the browser console to run some JavaScript and actually find how much money one can make through this Buy Me a Coffee. So through this video, through this journey, we're going to learn some really helpful JavaScript tricks, tips, and techniques. So we're going to see some Chrome DevTools tricks. We're going to learn about recursion. We're going to learn about DOM manipulation, dynamic interaction, for example, clicking a button dynamically through JavaScript. We're going to be iterating over node lists and learn more about node lists. We're going to see the string methods match and trim. We're going to be working with template literals, setTimeout, automatically scrolling to the bottom of the page using some DOM APIs, and learn about a really cool tool called CodeGrabber browser extension. So let's get started. I'm going to go here and refresh, so we will start from the initial page. Now, the first thing I want to find out is how I can grab the information that contains the number of coffees that people have bought. So as you can see, there are these messages where people say thank you, they post a message, and then there's this string that shows how many coffees someone has bought. So 5 coffees means $25, 2 coffees meaning $10, bought a coffee mean 1 coffee, so $5. And then as we click, we find out how many other people have bought a coffee or many coffees. So how can we count how many coffees in total? So first of all, I have to scrap this data. I have to scrape this website, this web page, and find all the instances of these sentences, bought X coffees, and then grab the number from these strings, total them, sum them up, multiply by $5, and get the total. So one challenge is to grab the text, and from this text grab the number of coffees. So this is what we're going to find out. And the other challenge is that we have to constantly click on this button, load some content, some more content, scroll down, then click again, and then click again until we get to the end of the list. So we have all the messages, and then we can iterate through all these messages and come up with a total. Now, let's start with the first challenge, which is to just find out about the elements in this page that contain these bought X coffees. Okay, I'm going to use the inspector, and I'm going to try and highlight the message box. So as you can see, I can highlight. I'm going to find the element that contains these messages, and I'm going to fold and try to see as I highlight these elements what elements are the ones that contain these messages and also the bought coffee message. As you can see, these are simple divs, and if I scroll down, I see more divs, and they contain all the information. As I scroll down and I click, I select these elements here on the elements panel, I can see on the left the element highlighted, and you can see that all these divs have one thing in common, which is they have this donation sec, probably for section class. So my guess is that all the messages that contain this bot coffee's message are the ones that contain this class donation sec. So I'm going to try and query all these elements in the spades and see whether my prediction is correct. So I'm going to double click and select this class name, copy, and then go to the console. Now, in order to select, to query the document and select all the elements with this class, I'm going to use the document object and then query selector all, and I'm going to paste the donation sec class. So this will select all the elements that are found on this page and contain the donation sec class. So if I press enter, you will see I will get a node list that contains 30 elements. So the query selector all will select all the elements that contain this class and give me an array-like object, which is called node list, and the count of the elements that it found. So as you can see, it found like 30 nodes, 30 elements containing this class. If I count these elements, you will see that indeed there are 30 messages here. Now, in order to be sure that I have just selected only these message elements, I'm going to iterate over this list and add a border so that I can visually verify that I have selected or I have detected only these messages. So as you can see, the document query selector all returns back a node list object, which is an array-like object. Let's find out more about this node list element structure by going to MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. So I'm going to search for MDN node list. I'm going to land on the MDN page for the node list. So a node list, the documentation says, node list objects are collections of nodes, usually returned by properties such as node child nodes and methods such as document query selector all. We used document query selector all, that's why we got this node list object, which is a collection of nodes. So what are nodes? Let's click. So here we're inside another MDN page, and it says that a node is a DOM node interface. It describes what the DOM node basically is. It's a little bit technical. I think the important thing here is to highlight this line. Most notable types of node elements are document, element, and document fragment. In our case, we're looking for HTML elements, which is the element type of node. So the node list contain elements in our case. Okay, let's go back to the node list and let's read now this paragraph which says, although node list is not an array, which is an important thing to remember, it is possible to iterate over it with for each. It can also be converted to a real array using array from. Now the difference from arrays is that node list does not contain all the methods that array objects contain. So it has a limited number of methods and properties if we compare it to an array. But we do have the for each, which will help us to iterate over this node list. So let me go here. I have the document query selector all. Let me store this node list in a variable. So let me say var donation, and then I will get the length. This is another property that is available in this node list. Okay, 30 elements. And now let me loop over these donations with for each. So for each, I will supply a function. This function will run for every single element inside this node list. Let me just console log to see what I get back after this loop, this for each loop runs, you will see that it will just console log every single element that it found. And as you can see, as I hover over these elements, I can see the element highlighted. So we start from the first one, as you can see. So this means that we're identified the donation messages. And if I scroll down to the last one and I highlight the last one, you will definitely see that we have like the correct elements. But just to make it a little bit more easy to see and verify visually, I will loop over and I will add a border on these elements. So I'm going to say for D, get the style object, which allows us to apply some CSS styles dynamically through JavaScript. And I'm going to apply a border, which is going to be 2 pixels and solid style with, let's say, a tomato color. So if I run this, it will loop over every donation and it will apply a border style. So now if I scroll down, you will see that all the selected elements have this tomato border around them. So I can visually verify that only these elements were selected and there's no other element in this page that contains this donations sec class. Okay, I'm pretty sure at this point that this is all I need to grab. Now the next thing I want to do is, of course, I want to iterate over these donations and then grab the text that contains bought X coffees. So in order to test this and try to find a way to grab just this sentence, I will just pick the first one, and I will try to find that text on the first element, experiment, and once I have found a way to grab this sentence and then this number, I will iterate and try to find the same number in all of these messages. So let's focus on the first element, which is the first element of this array. So donations bracket 0. Okay, now I want to grab the text content that is contained in this structure, which is a nested structure. As you can see, there are lots of divs and then there are divs inside these divs. So I want to grab the text, find all the text content that is contained. So donations bracket 0 and then text content. And as you can see, there are a lot of new lines, like empty new lines, along with some text. So we can see all the text. And because the new lines are also special characters in HTML, we can see them as this escaped N. So I need to remove the empty spaces and the new lines. So in order to do that and have only the actual characters, I'm going to run another command, which is the trim. So the text content is a string, and I can run the trim method to just trim the space, the empty space before and after the characters. So if I trim the text content, you will see that all the new lines before and after the main text content, the main characters, is removed. So I can have like a kind of like simpler text content available without all the unnecessary empty spaces before and after this content. So I have this text string, and now I need to find this sentence and then find and grab the number. So for this one, I'm going to use regular expressions. So regular expressions is a way to find a pattern, to search for a pattern in a string. So in this case, we already have a string that is returned by the trim method. And while on a string object, we can run the match method to match a pattern inside that string. Now, match accepts a regular expression, which we can denote by these 2 forward slashes. So everything inside these 2 forward slashes will be a pattern that JavaScript will try to find inside the string. So let's try and find bot, for example. As you can see, the match returns an object. If it finds this pattern inside the string, it returns an object, and it contains certain information about the found text. Now, if I want to find something that it can be like something from like something that is variable. Like for example, this character will probably be 5 or 3 or 2, as you can see. If I want to find a part of the string that can be can take different values, I have to, for example, instead of searching for this, which will of course find and grab all the string, if I want to search just for the 5, I have to group this part of the string. So by enclosing the character inside parentheses, you will see that match will return the object with the string that it found, and that particular character or thing or pattern that I'm trying to find will be found as the next, the second element in this array. So everything I enclose in parentheses will be found in this array object. For example, if I try to find also coffees, I can create a group, and then in my results I will also find the first group as the second element, the second group as the third element, and so forth, so that I can access, for example, the first group this way and the second group this way. So I can search for a particular string and then find and grab a particular value within that string by grouping it using parentheses. Now, in my case, I just want to find like the part that contains the number. So I will group 5, and in order to be able to find any element that contains any kind of number of coffees, 2, 5, 3, or even a, as you can see, I have to refactor my regular expression so that it can find and grab all these different values. So instead of just looking for 5, I want to look for any digit, like any number digit. So I will replace 5, the literal number 5, with this escaped character, which means it will find any single digit number, 1, 2, 3, 5, and so forth. So if I run this, I will get exactly the same command, the same result, and I will get the 5, because 5 is a special digit. Now, if I'm going to run this on the, let's say, third element, so if I'm going to run this search on the third element, you will see that I will get 2, right? Bought 2 coffees. Now the problem is that if I run this on the second element, which does not contain a number digit, it just contains the a character, it will give me null. Because it didn't find a string that contains both a digit and coffees. So I need to refactor this regular expression so that it searches not only for a single digit number, but also for the character a. So in order to do that, I will use this operator, which is the OR operator in regular expression, which means either find a single digit or something else. So for me, this something else is the character a. So if there's a digit, a single digit number, or the single character a between bought and coffees, then I will just grab this. Now, if I run this on the second element, you will see that it produces null. Now, the reason why it produces null is because this sentence found here does not contain this exact sentence. It does not contain both a coffees, but it contains both a coffee. So it doesn't find this string and it returns null when it doesn't find the pattern, because this s is not contained in this sentence. Now, if I run coffee, you will see that I get the result and I get the group here. So bought a coffee, it found a, it didn't find a single digit, it found an a. So I get my pattern, I get my result, and I get the group. Now, how can I refactor my regular expression so that it checks not only for the string bought a coffee with either a digit or a, but also bought coffee with an optional s at the end? Meaning sometimes this sentence will contain an s at the end or no s. So in order to do that, I'm going to add the s, but I'm going to make it an optional. So I do this by adding a question mark. This means that this last character is optional. Sometimes it might be found in the string that I'm searching on or not. So in this case, it's optional, meaning that I will get a result because this string does not contain S. The S is optional. The rest of the string is not optional. So it finds bought a coffee and it gives back a result. So this regular expression now searches for the sentence bought a coffee or bought number coffees. Let's check again with the first result, with the first donation. Yes, bought 5 coffees. Then let's check with the third one, bought 2 coffees. And then let's check for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4 index here to see that we get the 3. Okay, so we have our pattern here. We can search inside these divs, we can grab the content, we can trim it, and then we can run a regular expression and match the number. So we know that if we run this command and then we grab the first result from the matching array, we will get a string representation of the number or the letter A. So that would be the second one. Okay, I'm going to grab this code and I'm now going to use it while I'm iterating over all of these divs so that I can grab all the numbers and then sum them up. So let me go to the loop and I'm going to be here. Okay, so I don't need to style. I've already styled this element, so I'm just going to paste this code, and instead of using donations here, I'm going to say D, because I'm looping over all these elements and this D contains every single element. So for every single element, I'm going to take the text content, trim it, and match this this part, and then I'm going to display this. So I'm going to store this in a variable called match, and this match will return an array if it finds a match or null if it doesn't find. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to check whether the match is not null. So let's just be safe and add a conditional. So if the match is not null, so if it contains like an object, I'm going to display the first match, which is the number. Let's check. So as you can see, it found 5, it found A, it found 2, it found A, then it found 3, 5, and so forth. So I'm able to grab these numbers. Okay. Now, the thing I want to do is to actually get these numbers and sum them up. So for this, I have to turn them into a number. So instead of just match, I'm going to run the number constructor. And if I run the number, if I call the number constructor like this, it's going to act as a function that transforms a value into a number. So instead of a string, I'm going to get the number version of 3, 2, 5, and so forth. Let's see what we get. You will see that instead of a string, in single quotes, I get 5, 2, 3, 5, but I get not a number because when I try to convert the character A to a number, I will get not a number. So the conversion cannot be made. JavaScript will complain and will give me back this not a number. So in this case, I have to add a conditional and check whether the character is A, and then turn this into 1 and just convert the rest of the numbers, the rest of the strings into a number. So otherwise I will get none and I will miss the single coffee. So if the match is the character A, then console log 1, A coffee means 1 coffee, otherwise console log the number version. So let's see if that works. And yes, indeed, we have 5, 1, 2, and so forth. So we get all the numbers. Let's add them up and get the total. Okay, I'm going to go here and I'm going to say var total equals 0. I'm going to start with 0. And then as I iterate through the elements and grab the number of coffees, I'm going to add this number to the total. So if we get A, which means 1 coffee, I'm going to add 1 to the total. Otherwise, I'm going to add this, which will be like 3, 5 to something other than 1. Let's get rid of these consoles and let's console of the total after this loop. Okay, so after a few loops, we sum up the coffees and we see that we have 68 coffees. Let's run this again and convert this into dollars. So I will go here and I will use template literals. So let's just display the character $, and then use the $sign brackets to actually run a JavaScript expression inside the template literals. So in here, I'm going to multiply the value total by 5, which is the price of the coffee. So let's say total. So as you can see, we just came up with $340 for 38 coffees. Okay, we have found like how many coffees are up to here. The next thing we need to do is to scroll down, click the See More button, then scroll down and click the See More to load more and more pages. Now I can do this manually, like click, scroll, click, scroll. It will take some time and eventually I will reach the end of the page, but I want to also use JavaScript for doing this automatically. Now let's go to that second part of the challenge, which is to dynamically click this button and then scroll down and then click and then scroll. So I'm going to keep this code. It's already kept in the console memory. Now the way that we're going to do this is we're going to inspect this element. As you can see, it's a button. It has a unique ID, load more recent, which is very, very helpful for me because I'm going to grab this and I'm going to use document query selector to grab this and dynamically click this. So if I get an element, let's say so I'm going to get the button. I'm using the query selector this time to select only one element. I'm using the ID. As you can see, I grab the button. Now the button element, it's clickable, so I can run the click method to dynamically click the button. As you can see, I'm clicking and it loads, and then I can click again, which does nothing. That's because when I click the button, it removes the button and it replaces it with a loading indicator. It destroys the button from the DOM, and then when the rest of the messages are loaded, it recreates and enables the button. So the button that I queried before I clicked was there. When I clicked it, it started loading. It was removed, so we cannot just access it. Which means that every time I click and I scroll down, I have to run this command again to find the button in the DOM from the beginning. So I have to run this command again. And then just button click, loading and going down. So now I have to find a way. I found a way like to dynamically click the button, grab the button, click it. I have to find a way to scroll to the bottom of the page after the button has been clicked. Okay, how can I scroll to the bottom of the page? For this one, I'm going to Google. So I'm going to go to Google and search for JS scroll to the bottom of the page. And in here, I'm going to show you like a really cool extension called Code Grabber. As you can see at the top of the Google search results, instead of the usual links, I see some code snippets that some users have pasted here that will help me solve my problem or find the code for the thing that I'm looking for. So there's a user here, Shai Kang, that has pasted this code. This code will actually help me to dynamically use JavaScript and dynamically scroll to the bottom of the page. So let me grab this code and let's go here. As you can see, I'm a little bit further up in the page. I will paste the code, and as you can see, this code indeed scrolls to the bottom of the page. This is a good tip, so I'm going to hit 10 here and upvote. Now I want also to learn what is this doing exactly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search for this scroll to method. So once again, the best resource on the web, mdn scroll to method. It's a web API. The scroll to method of the element interface scrolls to a particular set of coordinates inside a given element. So inside a given element, for example, in the window, in this case, I'm going to scroll to a particular coordinate. As you can see, the scroll accepts like two arguments, the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So now I know more about this method. Let's go and try to understand what this code does. So on the window object, which is the main window, the main browser, let's say window, I want to scroll, and the x coordinate will be 0. So I don't want to scroll horizontally, like either to the left or to the right. That's why we kept this to 0. But on the y coordinate, on the vertical axis, I want to scroll to the document body scroll height. Okay, this is a y coordinate, a vertical coordinate, but I have no idea what this is. So let me check on the scroll height. Once again, mdn scroll height. Let's go here. Okay, the element scroll height is a read-only property, which is a measurement of the height of an element's content, including content not visible. So this is really, really interesting and important in our case. So as you can see, we can find the total, let's say, height of an element, even the one that is hidden from the visual portion of the browser, which means when we are here, the window has a height that is of course higher than the visual portion. So if this, for example, height is 1000 pixels, right now the total window height must be like 3000 or even more, because as you can see, I can scroll up and down, so it's really more than what I can see. So the scroll height contains the height of the full element, like the height up to the end. So if I scroll to that y coordinate, this is why I get to the bottom of the page, because this is the y coordinate that's at the bottom end of this window element. I now know more about how to scroll, so let's combine this with the click handler, so that I can, with the click method, so that I can scroll, click, scroll, click. So for this one, I'm going to run these two commands consecutively, so that I can, let's say, click. As you can see, it doesn't find like the button, so I have to run the query selector, and let's just directly select this and click. So clicking, loading, then scrolling down, clicking, scrolling down. Okay, I can do this manually running these two commands, but I want to automate this. So how can I automate this? I will create a function that will be calling the click command, waiting for a few seconds, because it takes for a few seconds to load the content, and then after a few milliseconds I will scroll down to the bottom of the page. So just to demonstrate, I want to document query selector. So let me copy this command. So click, and then after a few seconds, I'm going to use the setTimeout to wait for a few seconds and then run a function. So let's wait for, let's say, 400 milliseconds, about half a second. So click, then wait for 400 seconds so that the loading stops, ends, finishes, and then scroll down. So let's see if this works. It doesn't work. Maybe we need to add a few more milliseconds. So let's see. Okay, so we need to put a little bit, a few more milliseconds so that the loading finishes. Okay, so this is the command that I need to run all up to the end. Now, I have tried this before, and I know that when I click see more and scroll down and click see more and scroll down, at some point I reach the bottom of the page, there are no more messages, and this button element is not being displayed. So if I reach the bottom of the list, this button will not be there. So I know that this document query selector will not produce an element at that point, but it will produce null. So that's an indication that I reached the bottom of the page, and that's also a condition that I can check to see whether I reached the end of the page and there's no need to click and scroll down more. Okay, so how can we do this? I'm going to create a function which I'm going to call click and scroll, and I'm going to put these two commands. So I'm going to run this function, and I'm going to run this function recursively, meaning the function will click, will wait, scroll down, and then when this finishes, it will also execute this function again itself. So meaning at this point, when I click, I scroll down, it will automatically call itself again. This is what recursion is all about. So I will call the function manually, the function will click, it will wait 500 milliseconds, it will scroll down, and then it will click the function, it will execute the function again. So this is recursion, a function executing itself again and again. Now this will happen for as long as there is a button. So for me, in order to run this code, I have to check whether there's a button that can be found in the page. Because if I have just reached the end of the page, I probably won't find a button element. So I need to set a condition and stop this recursion, otherwise it will go on indefinitely when the button is not found on the page. So I'm going to say find a button, and then click the button. So just store the button in a variable. Okay, then scroll down, and if there is a button at this point, so if after this scrolling down we still find a button, so I'm going to search once again for this button after the loading. So if we can find like a button, then we need to call the function again so that it clicks again and scrolls and clicks again and so forth. So just to reiterate, we're going to run this function once manually. It will find the button, it will click, and then it will set the timeout, scroll down, and then if the button is there, it will click and execute the function again. Now, if this is null, of course, if the button is not there and there's a null return, this will throw an error. So probably I want to put a conditional here. So instead of putting the conditional right here, I'm going to probably need that conditional here. Otherwise the code will fail if the button, the btn is null, because if this button doesn't exist, this value will be null. So if this exists, click it, set timeout, and then click and scroll. So I will just remove this conditional. Now, the problem is that I've run this code and I tested it before, and there's a slight problem with this. So if I run this code, it will continuously click and scroll, and it will scroll and click so fast that at some point this website will think that I'm just attacking the website. So if you run this function, it will automatically block you after you have run all these really quick requests, which means that I'm going to be blocked from this website. I did this and I was blocked from this website, and I had to change my IP in order to be able to access the site again. So for this one, I need to do some trick here. to make it look that I'm actually clicking the page myself. So this is like a user, a normal human interacting with a page, and this is not a malicious script. So instead of doing this in every 500 milliseconds, I'm going to turn this to 2 seconds. Otherwise, it will probably block me. So let's run this function and see if it works. As you can see, it waits for 2 seconds and then scroll down. If I used like something like 200 milliseconds, you will see that this would be really fast, and it would be ready after just a few seconds. But in order to be safe and not let the website block me, we'll see at the end. I'm not sure if this will also block me. I just made it look so that it's an actual user that clicks and scrolls and clicks and scrolls. So it's a little bit slower. Let's see if we hit the end. It's going to take a while because there are lots of... Okay, we reached the end of the page and we did this automatically. Now I can run the code that sums up the coffees. So my scroll and click code worked. So let's go back to the code that was summing up the coffees. So carefully. So let's run this code that grabs the total messages, gets the numbers and multiplies them by 5 and gives me like the total. So I ran the code, but the donations variable was the one that I initially defined, which just contained the first 30 messages. So I need to change this and actually get the elements from the start. Otherwise, it will just contain the first. So the class was donation_sec, if I'm correct. Okay, so it went through all the elements. Let's just run this again with the styling, so we can also see a visual. As you can see, it highlighted all the messages, so it went through all these divs from the beginning, and then it totaled them and it multiplied them by 5, and it gave us like 2,195. Not bad, even though the quality of the content by David Gray is really worth a lot more. So I hope this helped you and you learned a few tricks and a few DOM API methods, and also important how to learn about these APIs and these JavaScript concepts. MDN is probably the best resource out there. I hope you enjoyed. Leave your comments and let me know if you liked the video. Thank you.